Palestinians don't do anything unless you pressure them. And the only way to do that is with money.
What the lobby is all about is to make sure that Israel gets special treatment from the United States forever.
But after occupying Palestinian lands for half a century, the pro-Israel lobby is facing a new challenge.
We called for a full boycott of Israel, divesting from it, and eventually imposing sanctions on it to achieve UN-stipulated rights of the Palestinian people.
A movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel, BDS, was formed on American campuses.
It seems to be achieving its goals. It threatens future American support for Israel.
BDS is a Palestinian rights movement that seeks to use boycotts of Israel as a means to achieving its ends. I don't know how often you guys look at Al-Jazeera's content, but I came across this article from last week when browsing their website, which tells us a little bit about a piece of legislation that was introduced by Senator Benjamin Cardin and co-sponsored by Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer that would make it a felony for Americans to support the international boycott against Israel, commonly known as BDS. Now, Schumer and Cardin are both Jewish, and I can understand that they might be concerned about hateful actions towards Jewish people living in America, but what we are talking about is a ban of boycott movements against a foreign government. That foreign government is also in violation of international law. This isn't a boycott of Jewish people, so I think it's disingenuous to assert that BDS is anti-Semitic. This legislation is an infringement upon First Amendment rights. And while this is an attempt to make support of BDS criminal, the reality is that we've seen illegal moves by Israel and Zionist groups in America. And there's evidence to substantiate these claims that I will get into a little further down in this video. The article goes on to say, in the United States, before Congress is seated in January, some legislators hope to pass a piece of legislation that would penalize support for the BDS movement against the Israeli occupation. The controversial measure is another attempt by the pro-Israel lobby and the Israeli government to paint support for Palestinian human rights as anti-Semitism, and to characterize BDS activists and supporters as criminals, terrorists, and racists. Journalist and activist Max Blumenthal admits that the pro-Israel groups that target BDS supporters are the ones that are really playing with fire when it comes to the law.
They operate through subterfuge, and they walk a very thin line between the legal and illegal in what they do in order to gather information and to smear their opponents and ultimately destroy them.
The legislation, known as the Israel Anti-Boycott Act, would criminally penalize individuals, including companies or their employees, who participate in international boycotts of Israel and occupied territories. In its earlier form, the bill would have provided for imprisonment. While the revised legislation has eliminated imprisonment as a penalty, civil liberty groups still vehemently oppose the legislation as an unconstitutional infringement on freedom of speech, which would impose potentially exorbitant criminal financial penalties against those who support a boycott of Israel. Now, not everyone agrees with BDS. Even some of the pro-Palestine crowd, like Norman Finkelstein. Finkelstein admits that boycotts are completely acceptable, and there is nothing wrong with that. But from my understanding, Finkelstein's issue with BDS is that he feels they don't make it clear as to what the end game is for Israel. Meaning that, what is the goal of the proposed boycotts and sanctions? Finkelstein wants to hear a clear answer. Should there be a one-state solution, two-state solution, or expulsion? Personally, I assume there are different avenues of thoughts here among BDS supporters, so it may be hard at this point in time for BDS to settle on one that everyone can agree with. Perhaps this is an important decision for BDS supporters to unite on, but on the other hand, there are some Jewish activists that stand firmly with BDS and challenge the illegal occupation.
One of the groups involved was Jewish Voice for Peace.
The work that Jewish Voice for Peace does is grounded in Jewish tradition, the most basic Jewish and human values, that every single person has inherent worth and dignity and should be treated with respect. We then see what's happening to Palestinians, the occupation, the displacement, the inequality, and say we need to end those things.
Scrolling down a little in the article, we can see that in addition to the proposed federal legislation, 26 U.S. states have enacted anti-BDS laws, with legislation pending in 13 states, according to Palestine Legal. It isn't just the Israel Anti-Boycott Act that could cause infringements on Americans' First Amendment rights. And just below this, we can see, in 2018, the lobby spent $3.8 million on politicians, with the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, accounting for the lion's share. We all know how much influence AIPAC has over politicians in America, but what we don't realize is that there is considerable money that is spent also on fake activism. The following clip from Al-Jazeera's documentary demonstrates a young man admitting that he was paid over $50,000 to help disrupt pro-BDS movements. This footage speaks for itself.
Tony was told of a demonstration that Noah Pollock was organizing. A bus took protesters to an event organized by the pro-BDS movement, Students for Justice in Palestine.
Hey man, I'm Tony. Marshall. Nice to meet you.
This is one of those things where either it's going to be amazing and we're going to defeat BDS, or we're just broken.
Well, you can't beat them, join them.
We're obsessed with winning, you know, so I just want to win. So
Yeah,
I want to win something.
They don't win anymore.
The protesters are on a fellowship program run by a conservative think tank called the Hoover Institution.
The whole fellowship is extravagant. Like, you guys are being like foot soldiers of conservatism. This is actually the first foot soldier activity that I think we've been forced to do. Tony, what's your connection to the conspiracy that we're all part of?
Yeah, the Israel Project.
So you can't not come.
Their plan is to disrupt the National Conference of Students for Justice in Palestine. Marshall said that the pro-Israel protest had been poorly planned.
It's a very fly-by-the-pants procedure. It was basically just like Noah Pollock coming and being like, look, there are these jihadis who basically support suicide bombing, and they're at a campus, and you have to stop them.
A chance to shout at Arabs?
As we're leaving, we mentioned to our boss yesterday that we're going. She's like, oh yeah, that's mandatory. You need to go.
While they've been told they have to take part in the protest, not everyone on the bus is convinced it's good for their reputation.
Do you know what my worst nightmare is? I'm actually not kidding. It's a photo of Dion and I together, and we're just like clearly identifiable. And they're like, "Oh, who are these like traitors who sold out to the Jewish conspiracy for money?" I'm like, "We did. We cost $50,000 plus benefits."
The next interesting part of this article gets into the Israeli government's role in targeting BDS activists and tells us, Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs works with front groups such as the Israel Project and the Foundation for Defense of Democracies to spy on U.S. citizens who support Palestinian rights and smear them as anti-Semites. The censored Al-Jazeera documentary had a great segment on this.
We are a different government working on foreign soil, and we have to be very, very cautious. We have 3 different sub-campaigns which are very, very sensitive. regarding data gathering, information analysis, working on activist organization, money trail. This is something that only a country with its resources can do the best. If we want to win, we have to change our ways. We have to think differently. And this is waging a holistic campaign against the other side. Take him out of his comfort zone. Make him be on the defensive.
Israel is involved in a secretive influence campaign whose aim is to discredit its challengers in the West.
In the Air Force, when you want to win, you have to have aerial superiority. If you want to win a campaign, you must have information superiority. And this is exactly the added value Israel capabilities, technological and otherwise, we can bring to the game, and we are working on that very hard.
In the United States, the lobby is working with Israel to spy on American citizens.
We're giving them data. For example, one day, Sima's deputy sending me a photo, just a photo in WhatsApp. It's written, boycott Israel on a billboard. In a few hours, our systems and analysts could find the exact organization, people, and even their names where they live. We gave it back to the ministry. I have no idea what we did with this. But in fact, 3 days later, there were no billboards.
Finally, the author David A. Love concludes his piece by saying, "In the US, this also means branding pro-Palestinian activism as terrorism, and any disagreement with the Israeli government as anti-Semitism. Supporters of the anti-BDS bill in Congress aim to quash any discussion of Palestinian rights and the occupation, in the hope that the Palestinian people and their movement for freedom will simply go away. The result is a repressive, anti-democratic piece of legislation that violates civil liberties and free speech, including a fundamental right to engage in political boycotts." If you guys have any thoughts or feelings about either the article or the video segments of Al-Jazeera's documentary, then please leave them in my comment section. I enjoy seeing the other people's perspectives, and if you enjoy any of the content, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Thanks.